All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share a part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome back. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. We are so excited to be together in person again after almost 2 years of gathering only online during the coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections with each other online also, as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Arise, O souls, oh, arise.
Good morning. It is indeed good to be here once again in the gathering of this covenant community of memory and promise. Be welcome here in the spirit of mutuality and goodwill, wherever you come from, whatever your journey has been, whatever name you call the holy flame of reverence within you. Whether you are here in this room in body or gathered in spirit in this virtual space, be welcome here, and in this company, rest for a moment in gratitude for the gifts of life. It is true that the world around us is full of pain. There is greed and deception, hatred and suffering, at times almost more than we can bear. When some perish for want of what others might easily offer, we have work to do as people of faith. We are called to speak out, to protest, to resist, to choose to love fiercely. And yet we must not ignore the beauty that is all around us, or forget the faithful care that has nurtured us and is needed by those who depend on our instruction. We must not neglect to embrace new friends and to honor old ones, for by these recollections we build a substantial vision of the world that might be. And without such a vision, the work of justice can become bitterness, and the call for accountable relations dwindle into crabby self-righteousness. We would be people of expansive compassion and generous spirit. We would build a house of kindness and gentle laughter and soulful beauty to nourish our hopes and sustain us in our public and private struggles. And in this place, made sacred by our memories, our promises, and our aspirations, we would nurture the children of a new generation who might carry the light of our shared vision farther than we have done. Week by week, we kindle this chalice flame, seeking illumination of mind and heart and spirit, so that we might be a light to the world. May there be reason in our minds and truth on our lips. May the fire of commitment burn in our work for justice and peace. And may the warmth of community that we offer to one another cherish and instruct our children and overflow from this place to touch all lives around us now and for a long time to come.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Sean, and I light this chalice for the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregations and society at large.
Now let us rise and speak once again the words of our covenant promise to one another in community. Yeah, it's coming. Hang on. Have faith. Well. Together we affirm goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to seek together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. All right. Now, Lynisa, would you like them to stay standing?
Only if you're short.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
Are having trouble seeing me as we get started, feel free to come up front or stand at the end of the aisle so that you can see clearly, because we're going to do a sign-along version of this little light of mine. So we're going to learn some signs for it. Okay, shake out your arms. Get ready to go here. We're going to be signing the word shine several times during the song, and we're going to do it a few different ways. So the first way we're going to do it is take all your fingers, put them together, and then make them shine. The second way, we're going to do the same thing but with two hands. The third way, we're going to do it the same way, only really, really big, and even take a step back and use all your space. Ready? The next way, touch, wiggle out. Touch, wiggle out, wiggle, wiggle out. The next sign is mine or my. Put your whole hand up and put it on your heart. That's the whole sign. There's a verse that comes next that talks about going places and says, everywhere I go. We're going to go 3 different ways because we're going to sing it 3 times. The first way is we're going to walk. So both hands. The second way is we're going to ride our bikes or drive a car, anything with wheels. This is the hand shape. Now, you can go any way you want. You can go up a hill, you can go down a hill, you can go around, just ride or drive any way you want. The third way is we're gonna fly. This hand shape, it's kind of hard. So you've got all your hands and you bend down 2 fingers. It also means I love you. So we're gonna take our I love yous and turn them into airplanes. So those are our 3 ways to get places: walking, riding, flying. And then the next verse that we're gonna sing says, building up our world. So making things better for our whole world. The first sign, take all your fingers, then make these 2 connect, your thumb and your first finger. Now watch this. And we're gonna swirl it around. This means we're building up our world. We're making it a better place. Our last sign is the sign for world. Again, we're gonna use both hands. One hand is gonna stay still. The other hand is gonna move around. Okay, I'm just gonna quickly show the signs, and you follow along if you want, but just quickly, real fast, look at them. All right, let's see if we can do it with Sarah singing, shall we? All right, everybody stand up if you wish. And again, if you have trouble seeing, move to the aisle or even come stand right in front of me. I don't bite.
Come forward.
We catch a glimpse of who we are.
And we have begun a tradition of celebrating their arrival with a community quilt making event. Georgia Griggs, daughter of Matt and Courtney, sister of Foster and Maggie, granddaughter of Barbara and Peter, was born on September 14th, 2020. So plans for her quilting party were derailed by the advent of COVID. But we were eventually able to distribute kits to our intrepid quilters who created the blocks in the safety of their individual quarantine. The blocks were then assembled by Jane Wilson, and I had the fun of finishing the project. Many thanks to all of those folks. Some of them are out there today. Would you raise your hand if you were a quilter? There's a bunch of you out there, yeah. Thank you. So today we finally have the opportunity to be together with the whole Griggs family and present this gift. Now, when I heard the name Georgia, I knew immediately that the theme had to be peaches. So Georgia, I hope that even though you are not really a baby anymore, that you will still have many years to enjoy the warmth of this congregation's care for you. Barbara, can you take one end of that? Yeah, how about that? So, Matt and Courtney, please receive this gift of community with all our love and good wishes to Georgia as she continues to thrive and grow among us. We are so glad that your entire family is part of our church community. Yay. Thank you. Thanks for coming up. Appreciate it. Our ministry to children and families here at All Souls depends upon all of us, whether or not we are parents ourselves, or teachers, or young people, or quilters. Each of us is an example of what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist, a caring person of integrity, to the children who experience this community each week. Each of us can do something to support our program of religious education and our young people as they grow and learn here. But no one is more crucial to the effectiveness of this program than its director. This is the person who connects with the children as a warm and loving presence, who organizes the curriculum and materials and recruits and supports the teachers, who manages the program's budget and fundraising, who works with staff and lay leaders to integrate children and families into all aspects of the congregation's life, who first offers care to young people and parents when troubles happen, and who advocates for the importance of what we offer to the young souls in our care. I consider that we are enormously fortunate to have Melanie Jackel taking on this role now that Reverend Judith Cady has retired. I agree, but hang on for 1 minute. For 10 years, Melanie has been Judith's dependable and creative assistant, and she is now moving into the position of director for our elementary program from infants up through 8th grade. Where is she? There you go. Come on up. Yeah, there you go. Melanie and her husband David have been active at All Souls since their daughter Sierra was very young, and they have all contributed in many ways to our community over the years. Melanie, I welcome you into your new role in this church. Do you undertake to treat each of our children with respect and care? And will you bring your best knowledge, skill, and creativity to enhance their learning and their connections to each other and to All Souls?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right. Trust me, it's coming. No matter how talented and dedicated and caring a director may be, no one can make a program like the one we aspire to provide happen single-handedly. Melanie will need all our assistance and encouragement as together we nurture the next generation of our faith. If you are willing to offer her the help and support that she will need, please respond, "We will," and then join me in welcoming her to this position. So will you? All right, yay. So happy. All right, you can have a seat for a moment if you want. And now I invite you to join together to affirm responsively what we want our children to learn here in this religious education program. We will begin with the voices on your left side of the room, followed by the voices on the right. It'll be on the screen. If you are participating from home, please select a side to join. The words will be on the screen, either online or in the room. As we offer education and guidance to the children of this community, what is it that we wish them to learn? The gifts of a bountiful world, to pause when they encounter beauty, to taste salt when another weeps, to honor the sense of reverence in the presence of a noble deed. We would teach them humility, to know that they are composed of star stuff rooted in the earth, to understand that their time and their knowledge will be finite, to offer to others the grace that they will need to receive. We would teach them courage, to speak truth to power, even when it is daunting to do so, to acknowledge the reality of brokenness and pain without panic, to preserve the integrity of their heart and conscience. We would teach them to be generous to all who need help or encouragement, to protect their fellow creatures from useless suffering, to share friendship, hope, and peace wherever life leads them. We would teach them that they are never alone, to experience the affirmation and affection of this community as they grow, to know that they are the heirs of an ancient and awesome tradition, to be assured of their place in the sacred, interdependent web of all existence, of which they are always a part. Now I invite Melanie to tell us something about the religious education program today and how we can support it. After she has called for this morning's offering, we will sing her and the children to their classes, and then the ushers will bring the baskets.
Good morning, and thank you for that very warm applause and welcome. This morning, I would like to share with you the Chalice Lighting words that our preschoolers and kindergartners speak together each Sunday as they begin class. If any of you know it, you're welcome to say it with me. It's very simple, and it goes like this. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the loving heart. And this is the church of the helping hands. I saw some people doing it. Leading the children with these chalice words, these aspirations, is just a tiny part of setting the foundation for nurturing our children's spiritual growth and discovering the shared values we all hold. How else does fostering that discovery look, and what does it require? I am committed to creating space and opportunities where our youth and teens can gather and explore what it means to live our Unitarian Universalist principles. The undertaking of growing in our shared values requires commitment to open, authentic conversations with our youth about difficult topics. It requires opportunities for service, and it requires creating a fun, welcoming, and engaging program. It requires providing connections, mentorship, and an atmosphere that encourages the exploration of identity, discovery, and belief. It requires providing sexuality education that is positive, holistic, and inclusive. It also requires training volunteers to be able to lead these programs. As it stands today, we need to raise almost $11,000 to fully realize our budget and carry out the many programs and aspirations that Anthony and myself offer. Fortunately, today's offering will benefit the music and religious education programs. Please give generously so that we may show our youth how much we support them in becoming truth-seeking, social justice-minded, loving adults. Thank you.
Now the children are invited to go with Melanie.
Go now in peace, may love guide all your ways. Beauty be the blessing of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness in your deeds. Faith to follow where the human spirit leads.
let's speak together the words of dedication for our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
From the Hallowing of the Everyday by Chet Ramo. The thoughtful person will try to walk in the line between jaw-dropped amazement at the wonder of creation and cautious skepticism about the correctness or finality of our knowledge. One morning, not long ago, I walked to college through meadows made misty by the heat of the rising sun. As I rounded a stand of trees and stepped onto the footbridge over Quessett Brook, I startled a blue heron that stood not 10 feet away. The heron startled me. It heaved into the air with bed-sheet wings. Push, push. I could feel the whoosh of air, neck crooked, pinnet head feathers flying, legs dangling behind like loosened mooring lines. The size of it, our biggest bird, the fierce eye, the pterodactylian beak. The effect was prehistoric, like a scene from a movie, Dinosaur Island or Jurassic Park. I stood on the footbridge and applauded. I'm no ornithologist, but I know certain things about herons that anyone might know. Things accumulated by generations of ornithologists working patiently in the field and by zoologist, anatomist, paleontologist, DNA expert, and aeronautical engineers. I know things that have been compiled in popular books by nature writers and field guide authors. I know, for example, about the bird's feeding and mating habits, its voice and call, its relationship to the European heron and the Japanese crane. I know that the heron, like all birds, is a close relative of dinosaurs and that feathered birds first flapped their wings in Jurassic times. There is nothing esoteric about any of this knowledge, nothing that requires special training in science. Everything I know about herons was subsumed in that epiphanic moment when the bird lifted into the air, trailing its toes in the black water of the brook. I see the heron as a sheet of feathers in a shock of light, a splash of blue shot through with silver, streaming droplets of gold. I perceive it as movement, wings heaving against air. I classify it as a species and study it as a type in its anatomy and mode of life. I subsume its presence into physics, chemistry, and molecular biology. I embroider the bird in pure mathematical relation. In all of this, the heron remains an object, occupies space and time, and has its nature and constitution. All of this, the heron is an it. But it can also happen if I have both will and grace that in experiencing the heron, I become bound up in an unbidden relationship. I am struck through by a power that resides in the bird, that finds a resonance within me, a power that is nameless, all-inclusive. I address the bird as thou. I enter briefly, ecstatically, into spiritual union with the bird, a union in which we are both subsumed into the greater mystery. The heron is no longer it. It has been seized by the power of unique, astonishing encounter. This relation, unasked for, unexplained, is the primordial religious experience.
The Great End in Religious Instruction by William Ellery Channing. The great end in religious instruction is not to stamp our minds upon the young, but to stir up their own. Not to make them see with our eyes, but to look inquiringly and steadily with their own. Not to give them a definite amount of knowledge, but to inspire a fervent love of truth, not to form an outward regularity, but to touch inward springs, not to bind them by ineradicable prejudices to our particular sect or peculiar notions, but to prepare them for impartial, conscientious judging of whatever subjects may be offered to their decision. Not to burden the memory, but to quicken and strengthen the power of thought, not to impose religion upon them in the form of arbitrary rules, but to awaken the conscience, the moral discernment. In a word, the great end is to awaken the soul, to excite and cherish spiritual life.
The world is full of clever people. Intelligence, after all, is a characteristic of the species. There are people who have, through no particular virtue of their own, minds that are simply brilliant. There are also people who are extensively educated and people who are deeply learned. Not necessarily the same people, but they are both common enough out in the world. There are street smart people and financially savvy people. There are all kinds of manifestations of intelligence in human beings. And yet, intelligence is not everything. As illustrated, for one example, by the classic rejoinder, yeah, well, if you're so smart, why ain't you rich? The world is full of clever people, and their lives are often just as confused and dysfunctional and empty as the lives of people who are not quite so bright. As we celebrate our religious education program this morning and consider its purposes, it might be helpful to identify more specifically what it is that we intend to teach and what kind of difference we aspire to make in the lives of children whose growing souls are entrusted to our instruction. After all, as William Ellery Channing said 2 centuries ago, we are not aiming to indoctrinate them with a set of recited beliefs. So what is it that we hope to accomplish here? The philosophers of early humanism in ancient Greece, when they enumerated the essential virtues for human excellence, were not following in the tradition of articulating what they believed was required of humanity by the gods. The 4 virtues that they named, temperance, justice, courage, and wisdom, are not matters of pious obedience to a creating, judging, omnipotent personality. Indeed, there were differences of opinion among those philosophers as to whether reverence toward the gods, and note the plural gods, was even to be included in the list of cardinal virtues. We consider the thinkers of classical Greece to be spiritual ancestors of today's humanism because their primary concern had not to do with pleasing the gods, but with living a full and good life from a human point of view. It seems to me that this is also our starting point as well. I am not looking to produce a collection of individuals who all conform to a pre-existing set of specifications allegedly provided by their creator in order to please that divine being. Rather, I am hoping that together we can cultivate in the children of this community a few human characteristics that experience has taught us help to facilitate lives that are meaningful, happy, and gratefully remembered by that part of the world they have touched. I think it is our job here as parents, teachers, examples, and the proverbial supportive village to give our children 3 particular gifts. And these are qualities they will not be offered intentionally or directly anywhere else in the normal circles of childhood. They are ethical self-awareness, a vocabulary of reverence, and the wisdom of epistemology, or thinking about how they know things. One of the elements of our religious education program, which I propose to examine with the help of both Socrates and Chet Ramo, is the 4th element of that classic Greek quartet, and that is Sophia, or wisdom. And it is important to remember in this context that to be wise is different from being smart or clever or even, in a lot of ways, educated. The wisdom that is required for a virtuous or excellent life has more to do with knowing how we know things and the limits of our knowledge than it does with acquiring great collections of facts or techniques. Our own usage of language today preserves this distinction. One may look at somebody's test scores and academic record and concede that they are intelligent and still be hard-pressed to observe their life and argue that they are very wise. We equate wisdom with a certain kind of insight, with the ability to conduct ourselves in a way that makes for wholeness and some kind of long-term satisfaction, if not immediate pleasure in our lives. That aspect of what we would tend to call wisdom, that willingness to subordinate the immediate to the ultimate, that is what the Greeks sought to identify as sophrosune. When they spoke of Sophia, they meant something different. Not so much the wisdom demonstrated by good decisions and actions, but rather a certain kind of understanding of what it means to know anything at all, and a respect for the right kind of authority in knowledge. Now, this can get to be pretty dry, abstract stuff, but let me suggest that there is an important payoff in being able to follow it. What Plato and Socrates and the rest of their crew are cooperating to do is to defend us from 2 opposite and equally mistaken and misleading ways of how we try to know things. Those epistemological mistakes, epistemology is the work of thinking about how we know things, those mistakes are alive and well today and continue to be seductive to the uncritical mind. Let me show you what they are so that we may better understand the inadequacy of both of these positions. The first, and somewhat easier to refute, is what I think of as religious revelation in the pejorative sense. This is the idea that knowledge about the world, about ourselves, and about God, about anything at all, can simply be given to us directly, can be dropped into our heads without interpretation or the intervention of our senses. This is the notion that there can be information that comes unmediated, straight from an unimpeachable authority, but that we allegedly know because, in essence, God said so, in a fashion so direct that misapprehension would be impossible. Now, if you subjectively have an experience of this kind of conviction, it becomes for you unarguable. Once you believe that God or some other ultimate authority has spoken to you directly, there's nothing that the rest of us can say. Yet such a claim can carry very little weight with anyone else who has not shared that immediate experience. And so unless it is confirmed in some other source of authority, it's not very useful in any attempt at rational discussion. The other unfruitful end of the epistemological continuum is one that today is often identified with certain kinds of New Age spiritualism, and claims essentially that there is no world that exists outside the imaginative powers of our own minds. The constraints that we suppose we perceive in the physical world around us are just products of our own limited thinking, according to this theory. There is no source of authority for knowledge anywhere but in the internal structures of our own minds. Thus, the world is as we have each mentally created it, and each of us wills and invents and brings into being everything that happens to us. And therefore, each of us must take total responsibility for all the content of our own experience. Now, such a claim is, on a certain level, very difficult to refute, but it prevents us from coming to terms with what Chet Ramo calls the shattering news that our lives are brief and our fate is oblivion. Do you see how these two kinds of knowledge are at opposite ends of the spectrum? Revelation supposes that we can somehow bypass our fallible reason and senses to receive truth directly, while New Age spiritualists assert that there's nothing out beyond our sensations and nerve endings to be known as truth. It seems to me that both of these epistemological systems are ultimately unsatisfying for a thoroughgoing humanist or skeptic. We are not willing to wait upon the arbitrary illuminations of direct revelation while mistrusting everything that is mediated to us by our senses in the meanwhile. But neither are we so captured by the constructive powers of our own minds as to dismiss the witness of other minds and the material existence of all that we perceive. Sophia, the classic pagan virtue of wisdom, would have us reject both of these extremes. And it begins in the confession of how much, in fact, we do not know. Socrates understood the cryptic statement of the Delphic priestess that there was no one in Athens wiser than he, to mean that others think they know things for which they actually have no valid authority, while he alone was willing to question, examine, and refute all received knowledge and recognize how little he could claim to know with certainty. This is not a mere contrarian celebration of ignorance, but a genuine acknowledgement of the difficulty with which knowledge of actual truth is to be obtained. One who would be a philosopher then, a lover of wisdom, must recognize how difficult it is, even with the guidance of teachers, to reach the idea of the good and to see things as they truly are, revealed in their ideal nature. Yet he claimed that effort, difficult though it is not to be dismissed as impossible. We are only the unwitting victims of appearances if we choose to remain so. Through the disciplines of study, observation, and reason, we can learn to know the good and the world that is revealed by the idea of the good. Chet Ramo, in his beautiful and compelling essay, gives us the updated implications of that discipline. His Sophia lies in the admission that the cosmos actually does exist independently of ourselves. Only when we know this does it become possible to try to know the world on its own terms, rather than as a projection or extrapolation of ourselves. Instead of expecting the world to conform to the structures of our minds, we seek to make our minds conform to the observable structures of the world. That discipline, to lay aside our fond, intuitive illusions in favor of the question, what is really out there? That is the virtue of Sophia. It is a kind of humility that wants the truth of things more than it wants to insist upon the world being the way that we imagine it. Galileo's heliocentric universe with the earth no longer at its center, and Darwin's evolutionary descent making humanity no longer a special divine creation, were both exercises in Sophia. They involved accepting that data exists outside ourselves and impinges on us. Many people were intuitively more comfortable with the idea that the earth was the center of the universe as they felt it to be, and that humanity was the special invention and concern of a powerful, loving God. Indeed, many people still are more comforted by such beliefs. Sophia is the wisdom to lay down those flattering illusions and to accept the evidence of a universe far more vast and less caring than the human race had ever imagined. It is the intellectual integrity that rejoices in knowing the truth, however disillusioning, however impersonal. Ramos Sophia suggests that on the other side of that willingness to surrender one's illusions lies a far more vital and liberating and fulfilling sort of truth that is worth a struggle to gain. When we confront the world in the bright sunlight of observed experience, we are often inclined to blink and stagger and marvel. But gaze as long and fully as you will, still you will actually only see a small fraction of the world's wonder. And if you would know what is truly wonderful, it is how little of the total wonder you can ever know. Wisdom, said the sage Socrates, is to know how little we know. It is to accept that nothing is handed to us automatically. The meaning of our lives and our world is not given but must be constructed. And yet it is not constructed arbitrarily. We cannot in the end make the world be anything we want it to be or make it mean whatever we choose. Sophia is to know that the building blocks of meaning are out there, the inescapable facts of the universe, of our own finitude and mortality, as well as our ideals and aspiration, and the vast, intricate laws and harmonies of the spheres. They do yield to us those immensities, to our patient and careful investigation, to our accurate reasoning, the cells and the stars and the atoms tell their astounding secrets and reveal a beauty that leaves us dumbstruck or babbling. Out of that fundamental wonder and finitude, that encounter with the realness and otherness of the world, we build our way of being. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, says the traditional text. And I suspect that statement is pointing to this same reality, this stunning grandeur that is not our doing, but that forms the basis of all we can ever know. The pain and the pleasure and the risk and the responsibility of being alive in this world, Wendell Berry called it. From that wisdom arise the two other qualities that seem to me the special business of religious education for the purpose of growing souls. The first is to develop a vocabulary of reverence so that we have a way of talking about the kind of experience that Chet Ramo describes of his encounter with the heron. The astonishing beauty and otherness of the natural world, its enormous intricacy and power, sometimes overwhelms us with a combination of awe, mystery, and wonder. And so too can the human capacity for deeds of greatness, for nobility, self-sacrifice, and care. The upliftedness that we feel in such moments is essential to our full humanity, to the recognition that both the natural and the moral universe forever call us to something larger than our finite self-concerns. The conventional language of divinity is one attempt to communicate about that experience so that we can express it and summon it again. But the experience itself is not predicated on any kind of theistic belief. An adequate religious education, as I understand it, gives our children ways of naming such moments in their own lives and of recognizing the many vocabularies that other people use to talk about them and share them. The second aspect of wisdom that I hope we are inviting our children to learn is what I call ethical self-awareness. This is the ability to recognize when they find themselves in a position where their moral values are at risk of being compromised early enough that they can take a stand. I think this month, especially of the Russian foot soldiers, young men and women barely past their teens, who were brought to the Ukrainian invasion under false pretenses, some of whom have chosen to lay down their arms and surrender or mutiny against their commanders rather than participate in war crimes or other actions that they know are wrong. It is true that this kind of resistance often requires courage to follow through. But first, there must be the threshold awareness that something is not right before we are in too deep already and our values compromised before we even start to ask the questions. It takes a special self-confidence and commitment to stay alert to the moral ambiguities that arise in life and heed the quiet voice of conscience in its first troubled warnings. Of course, it is never the wrong time to do the right thing. But once you have started shooting, or taking the bribes, or turning a blind eye to the bullying, or being complicit with a tyrant, it becomes harder to find the path of integrity once more. If we can teach our children to pay attention to the values that are operating in all the life situations that they face, and to honor the advice of conscience, we will have made an important contribution to their spiritual growth and to the world's better future. Socrates, standing on the shore of the human mind, saw how vast is the ocean of the universe's truth and of our ignorance. People were not flattered then, as they are not flattered now, to be told how little are all their self-important ideas compared to the reality of all that is, and how demanding are the standards of truth. To be wise, finally, is to give over our preoccupied little sand pails and teaspoons on the beach, at least for a moment, and to stand before the endless horizon of the universe in humble wonder. Only then are we fully human. Only then are we conscious of the most important thing our children can learn from our love and our example. For it is in knowing how marvelous is this our world, and how much there is to know, and for all our cleverness, how little of it we ultimately comprehend, that they and we will be ready to love wisdom and grow souls large enough to be truly wise. Let's rise and sing together.
We dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. A child is born among us, and we feel a special glow. We see time's endless journey as we watch the baby grow. We thrill to hear imagination freely
we release this flame and send the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment out into the world. While these we also carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. For unto us our children are given as an encouragement of hope and strength. What a tragedy it would be if people were never to be better than we are today. If the promise of the human venture were to be eternally limited in us. Rather, let this be our song. That new life in a rising tide will cause another generation, like the green grass of the fields, to spring up and renew the face of the earth, and once more bend the arc of justice. For unto us our children are born. Unto us new chances are given, generation upon generation. May we offer wise guidance, worthy examples, and empowering resources so that all our children might go forth to lives of creativity, service, and love that shall bless this world we share.